Welcome, everybody, to another week here on the Pattison Report podcast. I'm Brandon. That's Ryan. And we're still 1 week away from being able to substantively talk about the Eagles again. And we're going to get to that at the bottom of the broadcast today, what the plan for next week is.
We do have to talk about it because we are 7 days away from the draft. I'm so excited.
Yes, our next episode will be scheduled a bit differently. It'll be a draft focused episode. So we'll close on that today with what to expect from us next week. But right now, the Phillies won today, so I had these topics planned out a little beforehand. Phillies won today. Christopher Sanchez dealt as he typically does. The offense, looked a bit better. But, overall, if we're looking at this season in a nutshell, you have the Dodgers series is great. You beat the Nats to begin with, but you were kind of expected to do. Colorado was a pretty easy series. But recently, the Braves series, you lose that one, which sucks. You inexplicably dropped the St. Louis series, which is kind of the beginning of the alarm bells. And then, San Francisco is a good team early on, at least. They're 13-5. They're pretty hot right now. But a team that, if this Phillies team is going to do what we think it's going to do, should be able to beat. And, you escape with a split against San Fran. Overall, it has felt like the offense has been abysmal. We think that's going to come back. The talent is there on offense for it to come back. The scarier part for me as a fan right now is I don't think the pen has the talent to get a whole lot better than it is.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. It's really disheartening when you're watching NBCSN Philly and you just see the graphic of the reliever stats come up in the ERAs in the 6 or 7s.
Yeah.
I believe that happened last night with Jose Ruiz, and he was coming in, I believe Nola loaded the bases, and he came in for him. It's a mess. And you sent 2 high-level prospects for Estevez and let him walk. He's been good this season. We've talked about Hoffman. We talked about everyone that's left so far. You can't afford to do that again. We can't afford to go out and get another rental arm and send off another 1 or 2 high-level prospects.
Yeah.
It's what we did last season. It burnt us in the end. Obviously, Estevez wasn't terrible. Obviously, the sour taste was left after the Lindor home run, obviously. But, what is there to do? Like, you going to go out and sign someone off a free agency? Like, there's no one there. And bullpen arms don't become available for another 2 or so months.
That's the scary part, is there's not a clear fix. To your point, I don't think it's prudent to leverage the farm system to get another rental arm. But at the same time, bullpen help. The bullpen's a lot like the O-line in the NFL, where in a perfect world, you don't hear much about them. But when you start hearing about them, it's rarely ever good. They're either the best or the worst. If your O-line or your bullpen's anywhere in between, you hear very little from them. It's also a position where average guys get overpaid because they're so important. So to your point, like if you're looking, if you're getting into May and you're looking for bullpen help, it's going to be few and far between, and you're going to pay a premium because the trade deadline's not here yet, and you don't know who the buyers and sellers are. So if you're the Phillies, you've kind of made your bed, unfortunately, until early July with the roster that you currently have.
Yeah, and even if you get a reliever in the early part of the year, you're still paying the premium because that's what bullpen arms go for now. It's honestly ridiculous what.
Yeah, you're a hired gun.
And now the Phillies don't have an out there, and I don't want them to explore anything too prematurely,
I'm with you.
You gotta hope that Romano fixes and turns it around, and that's a really rough bet to make.
He's looked better. Like his velo's up around 96 again. So he's looked better. But even so, like, let's say you get Romano back to where you were hoping he would be, then you still have 3-ish bullpen arms you trust. I mean, you trust Alvarado, you trust Strom. Neither one, look, don't be wrong, they're not perfect, but you trust them. And then I would argue you 50% trust Perkering, 50% Romano, put them together, that's one guy. So at the best of times, the Phillies have the equivalent of 3 trustworthy relievers. And in the MLB today, when a great start is 6 innings, you're going to run through them and you're going to be forced to use guys like Ruiz, like Tanner Banks, like Joe Ross, none of which have shown that they should be counted on in a close game.
Yeah, and I saw a Twitter account go back and, look at our past moves, and trades have been kind of rough for the Phillies, and especially with the bullpen.
Yeah.
We've talked about those guys already. You don't need to rehash it again. Obviously, they needed a change of scenery. I understand that, but, it just really stinks because we need like 1 or 2 more decent arms. But as of right now, we're just not there, and there's no clear path of getting there. I mean, maybe David Robertson off of free agency. I believe he's still a free agent. I could look, but that didn't go well the first time, if I'm remembering correctly.
It didn't go terrible. You're right. It wasn't. He was far from flawless, but he would be a welcome addition to the current state of affairs.
Yeah, he is a free agent right now. So, I mean,
I would take a shot at it.
I mean, but what else can you do? Like, that feels like option 1 and done, because there's nowhere else you could really turn to.
Yeah, I saw I'll have to see if I can find it. I saw a tweet today where a Phillies beat writer kind of highlighted the best relievers that AAA has available. I mean, it is a weird position to do that with. I understand where, typically you'll start the season with 1 or 2 guys from the minors and hope they make a stand. But if you remember, Orion Perkering wasn't ready to come up, and we brought him up midway through the year. And he hasn't been perfect, but he's the 3rd best bullpen arm we have. So I don't think you can completely write off going to the farm system for a bullpen arm, especially when you and I are talking about how few and far between the major league options are.
Look, it's a lot of the times it's bad when you rush someone up from AAA or even AA, if you want to pick that far down. It's usually not good, but in times of desperation like this, I think you have to, and you just have to let the young guys, ride the roller coaster. There's going to be some ups. There's going to be some downs. Of course, the fan base is going to get kind of disgruntled, but I think we'll be more lenient with these guys, knowing, hey, they're probably young guys. This is their first shot in the majors. They're trying to help us out. I think the fan base will be receptive to that, and hopefully they will, because I don't want a hostile environment at home for a young reliever in his first stint with a big league club.
No.
But it's just you have to make it work. The Phillies have to get to the title, which is the goal. It has been the goal. You're not doing that with this bullpen.
No, and look, if there's an coming up, let's look at it this way. Ranger Suarez, I would say from right now, is probably minimum 3 weeks to a month to making his 2025 MLB debut. I mean, he's only throwing single A warm-up games right now. So you look at about another month of the status quo. Once Ranger's back, there's your 5th starter. You bump Walker into the bullpen. I'm not a Taijuan Walker guy. He's been pretty abysmal as a starter. However, looking at the bullpen as it's currently constructed, I don't know that I could look at that and go, well, Taijuan Walker would be your 4th best bullpen arm as it sits right this second. Because what gets him in trouble is after, the 3rd, 4th, once you've seen him once, he's predictable. if I only needed 2 innings out of Taiwan and I had the choice between him and Jose Ruiz, Tanner Banks, I think I'd almost feel like Taiwan's an upgrade if we can get Ranger back and put him in the pen. He doesn't solve your problem, but it's better than what we got right now.
Yeah, it's tough when that's your best option.
Oh, it sucks. Don't get me wrong, man.
I agree. I agree. It is the best option. I think that's the way you should probably go. But man, letting Hoffman walk was probably. It kind of feels like that's where the doors kind of close and shut a little bit in this window.
Yeah, watching him go, and then looking back, revisionist history on how little you got back from Sir Anthony and Soto.
I mean, that man, he was supposed to sign in Baltimore. They offered him a contract, and the physical fell through.
Yeah.
He blew him a kiss with
good for Jeff, dude. He's dealing.
He's still in Philly at heart.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah, and there's no bad blood, I don't think, with Hoff because we gave him a chance at all this. But as a Phillies fan, you can't help but look and see what he's doing in Toronto and think, if this team doesn't win a World Series, $33 million stood in the way. Of all the money we spend, the Bryce deal, the trade deal, we're the Nola deal, the Wheeler, all this big money that we throw at it. If this team comes up short this year on a World Series, you can point pretty directly to the $33 million that they weren't willing to spend.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that far yet because the Dodgers could just run over everybody and you just sit there and you're like, okay, we had no chance.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very realistic outcome for this season.
But this team, as flawed as they are, already beat the Dodgers.
I know, but it gets different when you get in the postseason. But still, the bank's different, and we could run that hypothetical so many times that it feels like that's where we're heading for an NLCS, especially with the Braves struggles. But we're not even barely a 10th into the season, so
yeah, I think you're right. We're a little over a 10th.
You're at game 18 was today?
Yeah. Wait.
So yeah, we're not even close to.
Yeah, we're 11. So, yeah,
we're not even close to even halfway meaningful, regular season stuff being played. Where we're not even close to crunch time is what I'm trying to say. But we need a reliever. I don't know how it's going to happen. That's that.
We also need a couple other things because it's starting to feel like October again in not the right way. Not the way that the excitement's high, the bank is rocking, and all these other things. It's starting to feel like that scheduled time of year where the Phillies forget how to hit, which unfortunately last year was October. Look, the lineup, the bullpen's been what it's been. We're going to get the starting pitching next. But the lineup has underwhelmed. I mean, look, Schwarber's been electric. Harper's been very, very good. And Castellanos, other than that one Braves game, has been sensational. But, buddy, if you look around outside of those three guys, it's been pretty bleak up and down the lineup. They're currently using our lineup, which I think is cool. Stott leading off, Schwarber at 4. Schwarber's held up his end of the deal. Stott could be better. Trey could be better. Bohm, the last 2 games has shown improvement, so maybe he's working his way out of it. But if the team's not going to have a bullpen, you've got to be able to outslug the other team. And so far, today withstanding, that hasn't been the Phillies' MO.
They live and die by the long ball. And it just, it kind of feels like we needed that contact guy because you see Marsh in one of the biggest slumps of his career. I think it is the biggest. Alec is right there with him. And, Johan Rojas, they subbed him out last night after that throw, that errant throw. That
he's just not an MLB center fielder, unfortunately, as much as we want him to be.
It hurts because it kind of feels like we rushed him up a little too quick. So
you might be right.
And then it's just, where's the spark coming from? I mean, Harper and Schwarber have been great as expected, but you spend all this money on this lineup and you expect them to score 5-6 runs every night so that the bullpen can, come in with a 3-4 run lead after the starter gives up one or two. That's kind of the way they plan this out. And so far, most of the starters are holding their end of the bargain with, Sanchez, Luzardo, Wheeler being incredible. Nola's been a little rocky, but he settled in last night until the end.
Huh?
And he settled in for like the middle 3 innings.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, like, he was charged with 6 earned last night.
It didn't. I'm talking about like the middle cluster. The first inning was really bad, and the last inning he pitched was really bad. But the middle, he was all right.
Sure, he's 0-4 with like an 8 ERA.
I'm not defending him. I'm saying most of the starters are holding up their end of the bargain. I'm talking about the other 3 guys that are holding it up.
Yeah, Sanchez has been spectacular. Luzardo's been a stud. Wheeler's been mostly great with 1 rocky start. And Nola's been, in my opinion, pretty abysmal.
He's been abysmal. I'm just saying he had 3 okay innings last night. That's the point I was trying to get across there. I'm not saying he's holding it up his end of the bargain. His velo's down. It's concerning. We'll have to have that talk soon.
It's worrisome. It's like 9. It's not even like 91, 92. It's like 90.
Yeah, and that's where you get real problems if your control isn't working.
Yeah.
There was a couple of middle knuckle curves last night where I was just holding my breath. Every time you see the knuckle curve and it ends middle, almost routinely, it felt like.
It looks like a lob, and it should get hit. It should get sent out. So hopefully he can straighten that out. I saw a stat where he's not a good cold weather pitcher. It's been an unusually cold April. His May numbers are typically much better than his April numbers. So hopefully, once he gets a little bit sweatier, his hands get warm, he can get some more spin on the ball. Maybe things will get a little bit better. He has to pitch well in cold weather.
It is odd year Nola, though.
Is what?
It is odd year Nola, though.
That's the other thing. I mean, he was, 23 was a bad year. 24 was sensational. This year, all the way back to, I think 2019 was the first time odd year Nola reared its ugly head. And it's been pretty consistent.
It definitely has. I was looking at a graphic last night and I couldn't believe my eyes. I didn't know it got that out of hand.
No, it's so true. Like, it's not even like a theory. It's pretty factual.
It seems like a fact at this point. But yeah, I mean, if Nola turns it around, the starting rotation's been absolutely electric outside of Nola. And, 1 Taiwan Walker start. The other 2 were pretty decent. Like I said, we got to tip our hat to that. But
they're giving it to the bullpen. The problem is they're not hitting well, and the bullpen's not good. So we're giving it to the bullpen either down 2 or like up 1, which is a nightmare scenario for the way this team's constructed.
Exactly. The windows start blowing out at CBP, and that's good for the hitters, but it's also bad for the pitchers. So we'll see how that translates. But as we get in the warmer weather here, hopefully Nola can turn around.
Yeah, the thing about Nola is he always has. I'm as worried as the next guy because I feel like we talked about, this is the last wide open year of the window.
It's gonna slam shut.
Yeah, so I'm also worried about Nola, but in his defense, he's never given us a reason not to believe he won't turn it around. For his entire Phillies career, he's always turned it around. So that's what I have to find comfort in. And again, like you said, the starting pitching has done its part. Even if Nola is bad all year, he becomes your 5th starter and you're 4 deep on the front end, which any team would love to have. The offense has to hold up their end of the bargain. They cannot keep turning it over to the bullpen down 2-0. Your starter's standing on his head, throwing 2 earned across 6 in an era where hitting's at an all-time high. Like, if your starter gives up 2 across 6 innings, that's got to be a win if you're going to try and make something out of the season. And too often for the Phillies, it hasn't been. And I don't know how to fix it. Like you said, it's home run or bust. You have guys like Casty, like Schwarber, like Harper who are capable of doing that. But you can't be 3 out of 9. You got to have Stott's got to be consistent. JT's got to be consistent. Trey, you're getting paid $300 million. I don't need you to have a ton of pop, but you got to be hitting north of like 260 easy. And we just haven't gotten that.
I think this team desperately needs a shakeup. I like how they're, getting away from the celebration stuff. We talked about that in detail. I think you either bring someone in or you just straight fire the hitting coach. You fire Kevin Long. I mean, that's got to be on the table at this point, right?
Yeah, because, I get what he did in 23. That would have been March's first year, and the team was hitting. We brought in a center fielder for, at the time, what seemed like a pretty low price. Logan O'Hoppy's turned into a hell of a catcher, so that price has gone up. But he turned a guy in March who had the tools but couldn't hit. Remember, March hit well in 23, and he started 24 hitting well. But since then, you're right. All the things Kevin Long could hang his hat on have gone by the wayside. Trey has regressed. Bryson Stott's regressed. Bohm has regressed. Marsh has regressed. You can't really – I don't hold Kevin Long responsible for guys like Bryce, Kyle, JT, or Nick. They're veterans. They're pros. They know how to hit. But when you're hitting coach –
they're the good hitters in our lineup right now. That's the thing.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. But I don't give Kevin Long credit for when they're good or hate for when they're bad. They manage themselves. What's scary to me is all of our young guys have not gotten better under Kevin Long.
Sometimes you have to take a step back and look at the coaching. And, Logan O'Hoppy, of course, he's been great, but he was blocked here by JT. You got to take that. Yeah. You got to take that look. I know you are. It's just worth noting how good of an MLB player he's become. But wouldn't that be nice to have him as a trade piece right now for a bullpen arm?
Yeah, for a pen arm. You're right. I think even looking back on that deal with the March that we currently have, I still do it only because, one, he was blocked by JT. Two, even after getting rid of O'Hoppy, I still think you have JT's successor in the building in Rafael Marchand, who's shown he can be a really good MLB catcher when given the opportunity. What's more, I think it's a bigger indictment on the coaching staff that they haven't been able to advance Brandon Marsh beyond what we traded for him. Like when we brought him in, he was great fielder, good speed, good pop, contact needed a lot of work. He's still the same guy 3 seasons later.
It's really heartbreaking how none of these guys have progressed as you'd want, or, even just a little bit, it feels like. If Bryson Stott progressed into a 280, 270 hitter, he'd be perfect at the top of our lineup. I'm not, blaming him on that because he had that elbow injury last year, which seems like it stalled a lot of things. And
yeah,
he's been a little better this season than he was last year. It's just one of those things where, like I said, a shakeup is needed. I don't know how you're going to do it. I don't know how Dave's going to do it. Dave has still not had his patented trade the farm system away for someone yet. And I've been waiting for it for years. I don't think it's coming, but just know that thought is always in the back of my mind because he's done it before. I just think the owner, Middleton, gave him the red light. Hey, Aiden Miller, Painter, you can't do that. That's where the roll stops.
And look, to be honest with you, I think in 23 you could have talked me into it. In 24 you could have talked me into it. That window has also closed because at this point now, it's still World Series or bust for the current MLB roster. But I think if you're Middleton and if you're Dombrowski, you kind of have to hedge a little bit. And if you do miss the mark this year, you still can look, Aiden Miller has all the tools to be a stud. Andrew Painter has ace potential. Justin Crawford could solve your outfield problems one day. Nick Abel, if he progresses the way he is right now, look, he was supposed to come up last year. He was absolute ass and, took a step back. But that was after shoulder surgery, so that's different. he's looked better this year. So you have guys in the farm system that could become the next Wheels, Nola, Bohm. Marsh is unfair. Your best outfielder. Now it's no longer prudent to trade those guys because your current core isn't guaranteed to make a run at it.
Yeah, and it's kind of heartbreaking to think about. I understand the Phillies system is top heavy. It's not deep. It's very top heavy.
Yeah.
You got those guys, and then it kind of feels like a teardrop after, say, for one or two or three more players. If you trade those top guys away, then you're left with nothing. And you've seen teams over the years with nothing get absolutely gutted. Then the stars leave, and then you're back to 2013 again. And we never want to go back to 2013 onward.
No, ever. You always want to have homegrown talent somewhere waiting for you.
It's a necessity, even though basically none of our talent is homegrown at this point, except outside of Nola, Bohm, Stott. That's about it.
Yeah, you're right. That is it.
We brought a lot of outside pieces, and I think the move that I was talking about, the chip show,
Chris Sanchez.
True, that's one I missed.
And Ranger.
Yep.
Alvarado.
Yeah, the pen has a couple more names.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, the big names we have brought in, but similarly to the list I just ran off on the MLB side, I mean, you're never going to have a full team of homegrowns, but when this team starts to transition out, like you can start to see the replacements line up. So when JT, if he doesn't finish his career at Philly, which I hope he does, but when he goes out to pasture, Marchand slides right in, homegrown. Probably next year, Aiden Miller hops in for Bohm, homegrown. Justin Crawford, maybe next year, probably the year after. It's just nice to have that line of succession if you can.
Yeah, and Middleton's going to throw money at someone.
Yeah.
At some point to supplant the homegrown talent. He's proven that he will. And the Bryce trade changed the trajectory of this team for gosh knows how many years. If Bryce never came to Philly, who knows where he'd be right now.
Middleton wouldn't spend the way that he is. He reminds me, I like John Middleton a lot. I think he's a very good owner. I don't think the situation the Phillies find themselves in is remotely his fault. He went out and bought as much talent as any other MLB team has outside of LA, whose budget is incomparable. But he reminds me of Jeffrey Lurie a little bit, where in the pursuit of winning, he will do whatever he needs to do, but he's also realistic. He's not going to throw money at a problem that money can't fix. So when he went out and got Trey, look, we were on the doorstep of the World Series. Thought we needed one more piece. I do think that after this year, let's say this year we flame out and maybe we're a wild card or division round exit again. I think it's going to be a tough conversation for Dave Dombrowski to go and say, hey, I want to go sign someone else for $200 or $300 million. I think rightfully John Middleton might balk at that and go, are we that piece away? And the answer, unfortunately, might be no.
It might be no. And we have to worry about re-signing Schwarber because at this point, just
blank check.
Just give him what he wants at this point. And if you don't keep him, then the wheels probably start to fall off, honestly.
And look, I would throw – look, I know it's popular not to like the guy. I can't for the life of me figure out why. Everybody kind of thinks it's a foregone conclusion Nick Castellanos is done after this year. He doesn't get re-signed. Don't look now. He's been probably your second best hitter on the roster this year. Bryce Harper at the end of the day is going to surpass him by a mile because he's Bryce Harper. But by the numbers at this point in the year, it's Schwarber, Casty, Harper. Casty's been sensational since last June if you look at the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Those contract years are real. I swear.
But it's so popular. He reminds me of. I know you don't watch the Sixers quite as much, but Kelly Oubre Jr. gets the same treatment. Oubre was far and away the most consistent Sixer last year. At a point in time, it was popular to hate the guy. And everybody just went, oh, well, we got to get rid of Kelly Oubre Jr., ignoring what he's done the whole season. Well, Nick's kind of the same way. He went through that brutal slump, and the prevailing wisdom was, God, Nick Castellanos sucks. Well, since then, all he's done is hit over 280 for Pop. And the thought is still, well, after this year, we're done with the Castellanos contract. That Castellanos contract's a steal.
I don't think that's the case. I mean, everyone was out on Kelly Oubre until he made a couple hustle plays and showed he was hustling even in the last season. It's one of those things where Castellanos is probably going to do the same. Hopefully the season isn't lost, but he's going to show that hustle. He's going to show, hitting for power, hitting for average, and he's going to have a great season. And he's just kind of forgotten about because Schwarber and Harper are just those guys.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm hoping, I hope he gets the respect that's deserved. But, we did a half hour on the Phils. Between the last two episodes, we've done an hour and 10 on just the Phils. But next week, we got to shift briefly back to the Eagles because, look, when you win the Super Bowl, there's some good and there's some bad. We've watched a lot of guys leave the organization this offseason. And Howie was pretty clear that we weren't going to add a whole bunch of them in free agency. And boy, was he honest, because we didn't add jack shit free agent-wise, other than some low, high-value guys, high upside guys, which you kind of expected given our salary cap situation. So Howie's best chance to rebuild the Eagles after the Super Bowl is going to come in the draft. And that is all we're talking about next week.
I love that. I mean, Howie's still some moves up his sleeves. There's still some free agents out there that could provide value. And after the draft, I believe, I don't know the certain deadline, I could get that for next week. You could sign these guys and they don't count towards the comp pick formula, which, Howie was suggesting that we're going to get a 3rd round pick for Milton Williams, 4th or 5th for Josh Sweat, where that lands. After the draft, we could go out and sign a Justin Simmons to help at safety to help replace the loss of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and it won't count against the comp pick formula. So that's the big thing. I think Howie still has some moves up his sleeves, and there's some free agents that are sitting out there waiting, like Justin Simmons, that have played in Vic Fangio's scheme, and is like, okay, Howie probably called him and said, "Yo, can you wait a week?" Like,
yeah, just hold on there, hang in there for a second.
Can you hang in there for a second? We want you, but And then he went on Kay Adams' show and basically was like, "Yo, I want to play for the Eagles."
Yeah, so that's a move that could very well happen. But a week from today would be the draft. Obviously, we typically record on Thursdays. For next week's episode, we're going to aim to record earlier than that. Probably we'll talk about it, but maybe Wednesday if we can swing it. If not Wednesday, maybe Monday, something like that. That way we can get a pre-draft episode in, but we'll post it on Twitter the day before we do it. But next week, keep your eyes peeled for the Patterson Report Eagles draft special, either Wednesday or Monday of next week.
Mm-hmm. And just a little tip out there: look at Howie's formula if you want to get a little insight on the draft, because he drafts from a very select list. You just got to look for it.
Yeah, we have. We'll post some info along the way.
Top 30 visits, relative athletic score. It's all there if you want to look.
Yeah, so do your homework before next episode, and we'll give you a 24-hour notice before that one pops out. But for this week, I'm Brandon. That's Ryan. This is a Passing Report. See you next week.